God speaks to me, not audibly, but like in my mind and my heart. I was at an AA meeting in 2006, and I clearly heard, like, inside of me, put everything on the back burner and get to know me better. And I knew that it was my higher power because I don't think like that.
That was the voice of Kyle H. Welcome to the Daily Reflection Podcast. My name is Lee M. You might remember me from the episode I recorded with Mike on January 14th. And since then, I've been helping him out with the podcast. You might hear me from time to time. Today we have a special guest, my friend Kyle H. from Harpers, Ferry, West Virginia. Kyle has been so important to me in my recovery. He has a powerful story. He's been a great friend of mine since I came into the rooms, and I can't wait for you to hear the episode.
First, I'd like to welcome back Lee from Northern Virginia. It's great to have you back on the show.
Great to be back, Mike. Thanks for having me back.
And I understand you brought a guest.
I did. So tonight I've got with me my dear friend Kyle H. He's from Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. And this is a person who, I don't know if he knows it or not, but he's been extremely instrumental in my recovery. He's got a powerful message, and I'm just so excited to have him here with us.
Welcome, Kyle.
Thank you for having me here.
Lee's told me all about you, and I'm excited to have a conversation with you. Kyle, would you start us off by reading the daily reflection for today?
Sure. So the daily reflection that I chose was round the clock faith. Faith has to work 24 hours a day in and through us, or we perish. And that's from the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, page 16. The essence of my spirituality and my sobriety rests on around-the-clock faith in a higher power. I need to remember and rely on the God of my understanding as I pursue all of my daily activities. How comforting for me is the concept that God works in and through people. As I pause in my day, do I recall specific, concrete examples of God's presence? Am I amazed and uplifted by the number of times this power is evident? I am overwhelmed with gratitude for my God's presence in my life and recovery. Without this omnipotent force in my everyday activity, I would again fall into the depths of my disease and death.
There's a lot of God in that, Kyle. What does this reflection mean to you, and why did you specifically choose this one?
It's because I need it. It's because I really need round-the-clock faith. And in some areas of my life, I don't have a choice but to have round-the-clock faith. But in other areas of my life, it really is a choice. And with my story and how I came into AA and what happened before I came into AA, it had a lot to do with me looking at the choices. And this one clearly stood out to Kyle.
Kyle, talk to us a little bit about your story what brought you into AA?
Well, the older I get, the longer it takes to tell my story, but I know we're on a timeline here, so I'll try to be brief. I started drinking when I was 14. I met my current wife, my only wife, in the halls of junior high, and we started partying and experimenting together. And I really liked alcohol that I didn't have. I was very shy, just a very different kind of person. But when I drank, it changed me. And I drank from the very beginning for one reason and one reason only, and that was to get drunk. That led to a lot of fun in the early years. And it got worse and worse and worse. And I became a binge drinker. I'll fast forward to 1989. I'm married. We have a daughter. We have a son. And my son, Joey, was 6 years old, and he was hit and killed by a school bus. And I remember I was at work when someone showed up at the job and said, come on, Joey, or there's been an accident. We were in Reston, Virginia, and we had to head to Winchester, because that's where he was. That's where we lived. And that was the hospital that they took him to. And when I got there, everybody was crying, and Joey had died. And I remember just looking at everybody like it's like slow motion and looking around. And I didn't know what to do. So I went to the bathroom and I went into a stall and I closed the door and I opened up my cigarettes and pulled out a joint and I smoked it. And that was the beginning of how I was going to deal with the death of my son. So that led to a lot more binge drinking, a lot more blackout drinking to try to run and escape from my pain. And that went on for 14 years. Through those 14 years, I did horrible, horrible things, including blacking out, beating my wife, not remembering, bringing women home. Terrible, terrible things looking back on it. And at about 20 years of marriage, my wife, I came home one day from fishing with a friend and my bags were packed. And my wife said, I can't do it anymore. You have to leave. The night before this, I had knocked her off of a stool in our home, blacked out, and she had to go to the emergency room. I blacked out. I woke up in the morning. I went fishing, and that was our life.
Wow, that's a powerful story, Kyle.
And I'm so sorry for your loss.
So that led me to, I left. And of course, the first 20 minutes, it was to heck with her. I'll just go get me a new one. And I went to the bar and I ended up in a hotel room. I had a bunch of booze, a bunch of drugs, a bunch of money in my pocket, and nobody wanted to come and hang out with me. I had alienated, nearly everyone over those years. So I was sitting on the end of the bed and I remember I fell backward, like laid backward, and it was like a TV movie, my life just flashed. Like I went back to meeting my wife in junior high and Joey being born and Marie being born and our wedding day and just all the things that had happened good, in our lives. And I laid there and I felt like a turtle on my back. And I was like, how did it go from that to this? How did I end up here? And there's a lot more to the story than I have time to share today, but I knew somebody in the program. So I picked up the phone and I called him and I told him what had happened and I came clean with him. And he told me, he said, he gave me an address, told me to grab a pen and paper and gave me an address and told me to be there tomorrow at 4:30 sharp. And that was my first AA meeting at the Stepping Stones in Sterling, Virginia.
Did you get sober right away?
Yeah, I'm fortunate. I have not picked up a drink since I went into that meeting that day, and that was October 21st of 2003. So going back to this round the clock faith, I hated God. I mean, God killed my son, right? He's God. He could do anything he wants to do. And for whatever reason, I believe that he killed my son to punish me. So when I came to AA and they gave me a sponsor day number 1, which was a beautiful thing. This group, they did things a little different and they gave me a sponsor. Like they didn't tell you, think about it. They said, this guy's your sponsor. Talk to him after the meeting. It was a beautiful thing. It's exactly what I needed. And so he told me that we do 5 things. We call them the 5 basics to stay sober one day at a time. He said, you're going to call me every day. We're going to talk. You're going to read what I ask you to read and suggest you to read. We're going to work those steps that are on the wall over there. He said, I want you to do 90 meetings in 90 days. And then he said, and I want you to pray on your knees. Every morning, I want you to ask God to keep you sober. And every night, I want you to thank God for keeping you sober. And I said, there's no way I'm talking to God. I don't do God. God killed my son. And he said, well, then don't pray to God. But I want you to get on your knees and I want you to just say out loud, please help me stay sober today. And at the end of the day, I want you to say out loud, thank you for keeping me sober days. Like, if you don't believe in God or want to talk to God, then pray to the air. I don't care what you're praying to, just pray. And then he said the fifth thing, the most important thing is you don't drink no matter what. And then he paused a second. He said, no matter what. If you even think about drinking, I want you to pick up the phone and call me. And if I don't answer, I want you to call every name in that book that we gave you with all the names of the people in this meeting. There was probably 40 people, 35 people. And he said, you keep calling until somebody answers. And when they answer, you say, I want to drink, and you're going to talk to them. And that was what I did, one day at a time for many, 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 many days. I think I went to a meeting every day for a little over a year and a half.
Kyle, I'm curious, did the compulsion to drink leave you?
Yeah, this is looking back on it, it's crazy stuff, right? So you remember I said I had a pile of money, my drugs and my booze in that hotel room. Well, I like to do cocaine, and I had 1.5 grams or so of cocaine, and I carried it around with me. Nobody knew about it. I didn't tell anybody about it, just in case I changed my mind. I don't remember if it was 5 days or 6 days or 7 days, but my wife had thrown me out and she wouldn't let me come back. I was staying other places for the first couple of weeks. But I remember I called my wife and we ended up meeting up. I pulled it out of my pocket and I said to her, I've been carrying this around. Man, it makes me emotional. I've been carrying this around because I thought I might change my mind. But those guys, there's hope there. There's like I want what they have, and I'm done with this stuff. And we flushed that Coke together. And to get further into your question, Lee, at 3 months, I was having a bad day, and I had just picked up my 3-month chip. And we live out in Harpers, Ferry. There's a little store up the road from our house where I was used to buy my beer. And I pulled into the parking lot on the way home that day after 94 days. And I don't remember exactly what day it was, but after 94 days of doing this stuff one day at a time, it was hard. It was hard. I mean, I wanted to drink. There was times I stayed at the stepping stones from morning until dark so that I wouldn't drink. But I don't drink no matter what. So I pull into this parking lot and I'm sitting there staring at the front door, and I got my 90-day chip in my hand, and I'm looking at the chip, I'm looking at the front door. I'm looking at the chip, I'm looking at the front door. And I really believe this was another turning point in my sobriety. I chose. I wanted to drink so bad, but I chose to start my truck, drive to my house, and I picked up the phone and I called my sponsor and I said, hey, man, I just came so close to drinking. And we talked through it. But the obsession to drink did not leave me right away. I had to, I guess people say, white knuckle it for a while.
Do you draw a distinction between cravings and obsessions?
That is a really good question, Mike. I've never had anybody ask me that question before. I think an obsession, and this is an opinion for sure, right? Because I have no factual evidence on this. But when I hear you say that, the first thing that comes to my mind is an obsession is something that I continue to think about. I'm obsessed over this. I will not take my eyes off this. To where a craving comes, and I grab it and I throw it away and it goes. So, I use the word obsession because I don't, that's probably not an appropriate word after you asking me that question, because they were more cravings. I didn't allow it to become an obsession. But there was a guy one time that said at the Stones, there was a pillar in the room, like a small beam, a support beam. And there was a guy one time, he said, if you knew how powerful this disease was, you'd chain yourself to that pole and you'd never leave this room. So I knew that as soon as that thought came in, I had to do whatever I had to do to get rid of it as quickly as possible, because I believe if it would have become an obsession, that could have been my failure. That could have been the drink.
We talked earlier about, you were just flat out refusing to talk to God or even think about God because God had caused such massive tragedy in your life. And yet you chose the daily reflection that has God all over it. So how did that concept unfold for you?
It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. So today I say that God gives me front row seats to miracles. And we've all heard God sends you to AA and then AA leads you to God. So for me, it wasn't going to be that simple, because I am one stubborn, determined man. And so I was praying to the air, and my prayers were very, very quick. And it was only because my sponsor told me to do it, and I'd made a decision I was going to listen to this man and do what he said. At December 21st, exactly 2 months into my program, I was shopping at the mall with my wife, the Dulles Town Center Mall, and I had a heart attack. And I started like feeling all weird, and my chest is pounding, and went to the hospital, and, I was having a heart attack, and turns out they had to put a stent in, and I was fine. But that terrified me. Like, it was exactly what I needed, because I started thinking, I couldn't help myself, but I started thinking about, what if heaven and hell is real? And if it is, where would I have gone if I would have died? And it was enough to start making me at least ask a question. And believe this one when I tell you this, my sponsor, I was on step 2 at the time, my sponsor had the audacity to come to me within 2 days or 3 days and say, by the way, you're on step 3 now. And I remember thinking, what a jerk. He knows I don't do this God business. He knows that, but he just says, by the way, you're on step 3 now. And we all know, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. Now, here's the part that I focused on more than anything: as we understood him. I really believed, as this heart of me, and as I started to think about this and just think about it, talk to people about it, I had decided that my understanding, the God that I choose, might just have an impact on the quality of my sobriety and the rest of my life. So I started seeking, looking into different religions, different things, spirituality, all this different stuff. And that led me to the faith that I have today. And today I'm all about God. God is the reason for everything.
So Kyle, you've obviously had a lot of tragedy in your life, and God is now a part of your life. I'm interested in the arc of how you've developed that concept and how God's working in your life today.
Yeah, I like to say it like this. Seemingly, some of the darkest days of my life were the beginning of a journey to some of the brightest and best days of my life. So I'm working the steps, and there's so much that I didn't have time to share today, but I'm working the steps. My wife lets me come back home. You're going to a meeting every day. You're hearing good stuff. You start to treat people better. Your head starts to clear up. My daughter, Marie, and my son, Kyle Jr., they had both seen all this stuff that I mentioned to you earlier that I was doing, blacking out, hitting my wife, bringing women home. And so they weren't too fond of their dad anymore. You know what I'm saying? And so I do my amends with Kyle and Marie, and life starts getting really, really, did I mention really good? I start developing this relationship with God in 2006. God speaks to me, okay, not audibly, but like in my mind, and my heart. And I was at an AA meeting in 2006, and I clearly heard, like, inside of me, put everything on the back burner and get to know me better. And I knew that it was my higher power, because I don't think like that. Like, I don't think about, hey, Kyle, stop fishing for a while and focus on God. Hey, Kyle. So it had to be my higher power saying this to me. And so I did that, and I really developed a very close, very strong relationship with the God of my understanding. I'm going to fast forward. I had 4 years of sobriety in 2007. I got my chip. It was a Sunday. I got my chip, went to a meeting, came home. Kyle Jr.'s in his bedroom, my son. He's 17 at the time. I knock on his bedroom door and it cracks. He's like, "What do you want, Dad?" And then I say, "Hey, I got something I want to show you." He steps out into the hallway, and I hand him that 4-year chip. And I say, "Look what I got today, son." And it's like it was yesterday. He holds the chip and he looks at it. He flips it in his hand. He squeezes it. He looks at me and he says, "I'm so proud of you, Dad." And he gave me a big hug. And then he went back in his room and shut the door in my face, because that's what 17-year-olds do. But a week later, on October 28th, Kyle Jr. was in a terrible car accident, and he died the next day. So I got 4 years and 8 days, and my son's killed. I was devastated, to say the least, right? I mean, how does this happen 2 times in one life at separate individual times? But all this stuff that I learned, all these things that people said at the meetings, I knew that it was real. I knew that my faith was real. I knew that I had an understanding of God today, and he would not kill my son. But he would allow my son to die. And so I looked at my wife, and I took her into our bedroom. I got down on one knee and I just told her, I said, "I want you to know I'm not going anywhere this time." Because when Joey died, my wife said she lost a son and a husband. And I said, "I'm not going anywhere this time. We're going to get through this together. And we're going to trust, love, follow, and honor God no matter what. No matter what." And I did what I was taught, the 5 basics. I went to a lot of meetings. I shared openly. I shared honestly. I called my sponsor. I had built a network of people and friends by now. And I trusted and leaned on my higher power to get me through that. And it was hard, really, really hard. But here's the amazing part. Through my grieving of Kyle Jr. dying, I never, that I can remember, never thought about drinking, not one time. Not one time. Yeah, but in 2020, I think it's important that I say this, that earlier I mentioned and kind of alluded to things I can't control. For whatever reason, I don't have a problem trusting God with the big things. Like, when Kyle died, there's nothing that I could do to change the situation. There's nothing I could do. But in everyday life, like a pandemic in 2020, I think that I can control things, that I can do things, that I have, and I have such a harder time trusting God with those things. So when you say, why do you choose round the clock faith, Kyle? It's not because I think I'm some big, faithful person. It's because I need to be reminded that if I'm going to get through life one day at a time, every day, without drinking, being a decent human being, having peace in my heart and in my life, and giving peace to those around me, and maybe contributing a little bit if I'm fortunate, then I have to have round the clock faith. and I need it.
I just want to acknowledge you shared a big story and a tragic story. And I just want to acknowledge that you shared that before I ask you another question, but I'm just so sorry for your loss. And I'm also incredibly moved that you're sober today. You know, your story is a message of the miracle of recovery. You are, you know, you just said, I'm struggling with the day-to-day stuff, you know, as it relates to the 2020 stuff and COVID, and yet you're not drinking over it today. So that's pretty incredible, isn't it?
You know, a lot of those men at the stepping stones, unfortunately, there's a lot of men that I heard with authority, with power. They'd pound their fist on the table. I don't drink no matter what, no matter what. I've been to their funerals. We've buried them. Some of them are still living, but they drank. And they're no matter what, there was something that caused them to drink. And I pray and I ask God every day that my no matter what is a true no matter what, because I know that all it takes is one drop on this tongue and I'd be right back where I started, if not worse, you know, and I have no desire to go back to that kind of life today, Lee.
Well, I, for one, am glad you're still here because you've kept me sober over the years. I've shared that with you. And you've been through some other tough stuff in life. I mean, I guess sobriety doesn't promise us a life-free life, does it?
No, it's what it promises us is that we can be present and we can feel and we can be a part of walking through whatever life happens to bring. And in 2015, an example would be my wife was diagnosed with cancer, and she had to go through a year of, you know, surgery, chemo, radiation, and I was able to live that with her. I was able to walk through that with her, to be there for her, to pray with her, to hold her. I remember feeling so helpless. You know, I called a guy up and I said, I feel so helpless. The only thing I can do is love her, pray for her, be there for her, take her to places. And after I was done, he was like, that's all you can do? Those are great things that you can do today for your bride, Kyle. And it really helped me realize that being sober is the gift that allows me to be able to do those things.
So you've given us glimpses into what sobriety has given you and the gifts that you've gotten. How are you working with others? Do you have sponsees, or what does your service program look like?
Well, it was different before this year, Mike, you know, but I do have a couple of sponsees. I've had, you know, some over the years, but, you know, not everybody chooses to not drink no matter what. And then I have a sponsor. And I mean, the stepping stones, they were hardcore, like the boot camp of Alcoholics Anonymous. You had, you know, they told you clean the ashtrays. You know, come in on Saturday and clean the house, or you know, those kind of things. So I went through and did a lot of those things, a lot of service work through the years. I got to a period in my sobriety where I might have been doing a little bit too much. And I was told that it was okay to just be a part of it without having to act like you had to be a part of everything, you know? So I'm kind of still in that season where hopefully if I can show up at a meeting and encourage a newcomer or share some time with somebody that just needs some time with somebody, it is my way right now in this season of my life of giving back. There is a meeting that I'm hosting once a week, but that's about what I do today.
You want to tell folks about that meeting?
That is a Friday, 12 noon. It's a daily reflection meeting. Can you believe it? So it's at Friday at 12 noon, and there's a Zoom link, and it's you know, I don't know where to go to get the link, Mike, except for to contact me.
We'll find it.
Yeah.
So Kyle, what would you tell a newcomer coming into the program?
Yeah. Well, I would repeat what I was taught and what worked for me, right? And it was take the cotton out of your ears, stuff it in your mouth, shut up and listen. And I'm sorry, but that's what I was told. So it's easier to say this over a podcast than it would be face to face to somebody, by the way. But seriously, open up your ears and listen and try to slow down your mind. Realize that just ask yourself the question, what if there's another way? What if there's a misperception here? And just be open to listening to people and finding the hope in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then, of course, find a sponsor and practice the 5 basics that I shared, or whatever similar your sponsor would tell you to do. But it's a one day at a time, sometimes 1 minute at a time. It will be hard. It will be challenging, but the rewards are unbelievable. Somebody in the rooms that I know said, I have a life beyond my wildest dreams today. And I like to say I have front row seats to miracles today. And it's all because I chose not to drink 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time. And anybody that wants that can have that. Anybody.
What a great message. Kyle, I want to thank you so much for spending time with us. Such a powerful story.
Thank you for having me here. God bless everyone out there.
Thanks everybody for listening. Wow, what a powerful message. Thanks to Lee for bringing Kyle, and thanks to Kyle for spending some time with us. We've got an online presence. Visit facebook.com/groups/Daily Reflection Podcast. We've also got a blog where we're writing stories about recovery. You might find those inspirational. blog.dailyreflectionpodcast.com. If you want to support the podcast, we've got a PayPal. It's paypal.me/dailyreflection. We've also got a Patreon account, patreon.com/dailyreflection. Thanks everyone. Have a great day.